Between Two Dumbbells. I'm your host, Skip Hill, and I'm bringing over 40 years of bodybuilding experience to the table, including 24 years of online coaching. I'm joined today, as usual, by Dr. Marv, also known as the Educated Meathead. This show can't work if one of us is not super smart, so thank you, Dr. Marv. For each show, we posit a thought about a training exercise or training methodology, and then we do a deep dive into the minutia. We might argue and debate, or we might agree and tell each other how smart we are. At the end of the discussion, we both decide if we smash or pass the topic of the day. Of course, we'll also be doing another segment of Intimate Time with Skip and Dr. Marv, and then we'll finish, as always, with a few listener questions, which are typically, though not always, related to a past show. Remember, every time you comment on the show on YouTube, you'll be included in a drawing at the end of each month to receive a Team Skip t-shirt of your choosing from the teamskip.com store, and you'll receive Dr. Marv's online bodybuilding anatomy course. The more times you respond, the better your chances of winning. We'll post the winner for the month on my Intense Muscle IG account, and we'll also reach out to the winner via their YouTube account. I know a thing or two about training, but I've built a reputation in the bodybuilding industry for removing skin. If you have too much skin, call me. Remember, skin is overrated. All right, Dr. Marv, I posit that calf training is still just as important as it's ever been for a balanced, aesthetic physique, even though you're really not rewarded for it anymore or marked down for it for having bad calf development or no calf development. But at some point, basically, the judges got together and said, you know what? It just doesn't matter anymore if you have good quality calves or mediocre calves. Now, back in the day, back in the 80s, ask Tony Pearson. He lost many shows because he didn't have good calves. It doesn't matter anymore. I wonder what your thoughts are on this.
I think it's a travesty that calves aren't required anymore. I've always wanted a good set of cows, not calves, because my fiance and my in-laws are genetically blessed with cows. So I've been chasing them for the 12 years we've been together, which means my calves have been sore for 12 consecutive years.
I've chased a few cows in my time, but I don't want to, I'm just, Anyway.
Yeah. So I personally, like, when I still work with a few people, when I write programs, you better believe it. In my mind, you train calves every single workout, so long as the actual joints in your feet don't hurt.
Right.
I think that's a great rule. I think that was John Meadows' rule, and I agree with it. We'll talk about how we train calves in a little bit. I think what's going to help most is we just do an anatomy breakdown, because people, yes, there's two main muscles that make up your calves, but there's multiple little helpers that are vastly important that I don't think a lot of people are aware of. And then there's another muscle that apparently cures cancer. I missed the memo on that, but
We're on
you
the
know which
same
muscle
page.
I'm referring to.
Oh, yeah.
One of my biggest pet peeves. But yeah, I think what we should do is start with the anatomy breakdown. I'll kind of tell you some stuff about it. Then we could discuss, there's certain things I like people to do before they train. And then I am very opinionated of only two different ways I program calf training. So I'd be curious what you think and how you do it. So I figure let's do anatomy breakdown first. Everybody thinks about two main muscles. One is your gastrocnemius, right? That's your visible calf muscle. That's the one that we'll talk about in a sec, is prioritized when your leg is straight. Then we got your soleus, right? That's the one deep to it. But two muscles people don't really think about. One is your plantaris muscle. So 90 to 95% of people have that. Not everybody does. We don't think there's any functional differences if you do have it or if you don't, but that's something to keep in mind. That is the muscle I tore last July. And then even deeper is this guy right here called your posterior tibialis. And then we might as well show one muscle.
Yeah, let's get
that
it.
Drives me up the wall.
Cures cancer.
Yep. That's your shin bone, is this guy, the tib anterior. So I missed that day in rehab class that if you strengthen this, it fixes everything from an anterior pelvic tilt to knee pain to big toe bunion formation to whatever silly crap you want to talk about. So
you can
those are
add
the
2
muscles.
inches to your calves if you train your
Yes.
tibialis. Yeah.
Correct. So those are the muscles. So let's break them down one by one because there's some important factoids about them, and then you hop in whenever.
Yep.
So gastrocnemius is your main visible one, right? That's the one that crosses the knee joint. So it will actually generate the first 15 degrees of knee bend. So that's why we've talked about multiple times how, you know, when you're doing your hamstring training, that is something to be kept in mind. That's why I love the dumbbell leg curl. So if you point your toes down in a leg curl, right, it's called plantar flexion. So since I have my model, this is dorsiflexion, this is plantar flexion. When you point down, that will actually take out some of the gastrocnemius is a mechanical advantage with knee flexion, but I'm actually not a fan of that. And I'll explain why later on if I actually want toes up. Now, because it crosses 2 joints, like we've talked about before, it does deal with active insufficiency, which is why as soon as you bend your knee and you do the seated calf raise, the gastroc does not generate a ton of force. So oversimplification, straight leg is gastroc, bent knee is soleus. There's 2 heads. There's an inner head and an outer head, and you could actually prioritize which head based on the direction of your feet. So if my toes are pointing out, I am prioritizing the inner head, aka medial. If my toes are pointed in, I'm prioritizing the outer head, aka lateral head. Now, what's interesting is we know the gastroc in particular grows best from lengthened position movements. Okay, so that's where this is one of the few times I can make an argument that's saying, hey, lengthen position partials are actually very scientifically sound. So there was a study that checked growth from a full range of motion, what they called the initial range of motion, which was 25 degrees of that dorsiflexion, so 25 degrees into the stretch, to 0 degrees, which meant this was parallel to the ground. That was the initial range of motion. And then they did one where they did 0 up to 25, so the end range of motion. And what was interesting is the 2 heads of the gastroc actually reacted a little bit differently. So, and then I want to make sure I get this right.
And I'm listening. I'm just making notes because I don't want to miss anything to be able to come back and ask it.
So on the medial head, they got better gains from that initial, that negative 25 to 0 than full range of motion or partials, which is interesting. The lateral head had comparative growth to the full range of motion. So it does seem like the gastrocnemius doesn't really need you to do a full range of motion. However, I still prescribe that. We'll talk about when we train, because if it makes it harder, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
But that's really interesting is that, yeah, getting up as high as you possibly can, according to the data, probably doesn't mean that much for growth. But I still like it. And we'll talk about why. And then this muscle, the gastrocnemius, we call it your gastroc for short, right? That is a pretty even mix of fast to slow twitch. So anywhere from 50 to 60 fast twitch to 40 to 50 slow twitch fibers. That's going to vary based on your genetics, the type of training you do. There's going to be different ratios and different heads they found. But type 2 or fast twitch has better growth potential. So you could argue the gastrocnemius could grow more than the soleus. So that's why some people, even though I disagree, and I'll explain why in a second, they only do straight leg calves. And I get that on vacuum in a paper. If you didn't know what I'm about to say about the soleus, you could make an argument straight legs the only thing you're going to do as a bodybuilder.
Fair enough.
Any questions or comments? What'd you write down?
Couple things. Number one, it bothers me. I'm bothered by the most bizarre things sometimes. But it bothers me when you say, because you've said this before, that we're not all born with a muscle with that. And we're in this conversation, we're talking about a muscle in the calf. But last time we were talking about back training, you said, well, not everyone's, this muscle attaches at the scapula. I'm like, what? Like, how can we have such a different makeup at such an advanced level of, well, you're just born without this muscle and it's kind of random. Like, how can that happen that you're born without a muscle in your lower leg? Not one side, like you have one on one side and not the other. No, you just don't have either one of them.
So
is that common in other muscles too?
So in cadaver lab, one cadaver had a plantaris on one side and not on the other.
Really?
And then another one had 2 sciatic nerves. One had 1 sciatic nerve. So there's going to be anomalies from person to person and side to side. That's why my job's way harder, because not everybody's the same. This ain't cookie cutter. You know the general area, but everybody has genetic variances.
Okay, different people then have a different musculature as far as genetically they can have those differences. Well, that's weird, because I was told that you are one sex or the other based on her. Oh, I just opened a big rabbit hole. I'm not even going to go down that. I just wanted to say that, to throw that out there. My point is that everything is not as black and white as what it's supposed to be. And it kind of blows the symmetry thing if you think about it. You know, we were taught in school, well, just cut the body in half and everything is symmetrical from left to right. Wait a minute, I don't have a heart on that side. I don't have a liver on that side. Oh, I don't have an extra calf muscle on that side either. You know, that type of thing. So there are those anomalies. It strikes me as odd, I guess. But how many people on the planet? Evolution over time, you know, I get it. We have an organ or two that arguably we could probably survive without if we weren't born with as well. So there is that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to touch on this real quick, and I want to see what you think about this. You said knees in versus knees out. Kind of assuming rotation at the hip to stress the lateral versus the medial head of the gastroc. I look at it differently, though it's arguably the same thing. But I'm wondering if you agree or not. I don't know, or I'm not convinced that the rotation of the heels in versus heels out matters as much as where you drive off the ball of your foot.
Yeah,
do you
100% cover that? And I don't do in or out, because remember, I have terrible knees. I think it adds stress to people. So if you want to, fine. I can't tell you how many times people come in with inner knee pain and they're doing their toes, their feet like this and like this. I mean, they're doing extreme angles with their foot. And I'm like,
but where would that cause? I'm struggling to make the connection with knee pain, because it's rotation at the hip. The joint doesn't seem to be.
I'm talking about the angle of your foot. So your foot could either be straight ahead. If you rotate your foot out, it'll prioritize the inner head. If you rotate your foot in, it'll prioritize the outer head. But as I rotate my foot, that'll compress one side of my knee joint and gap the other, or vice versa.
Okay, so I didn't look at it that way, but I see what you're saying. In my brain, I'm thinking the track at the knee is still going to be even. It's just the rotation at the hip. But I see what you're saying. There almost has to be then a shift in the stress from lateral to medial. Okay. Significant? Yep. I haven't had.
I've said twice I've had to tell people to quit doing that, and their knee pain got better.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
Yep.
Fair enough. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. So that's gastroc. Soleus. So this is a very important muscle for blood pressure, Alzheimer's, dementia, senior citizen fall risk. So like 10 years away from you, you got to start training your soleus. So there's a whole bunch of stuff to cover there. So this muscle is super deep, right? It's what regulates your blood pressure when you go from sitting to standing.
I thought you were being sarcastic. I literally thought that comment was being sarcastic. So now you do have.
I was being a smart ass. I was waiting for you to catch it.
Okay. Well, no. I'm saying, okay. So just so we're on the same page, are there connections between?
Yes.
Okay.
100%.
Oh,
yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's why we want to train it. Yes. This is why you want to train it.
Oh.
That's why the soleus, it's considered the second heart. So it regulates your blood pressure when you go from sitting to standing. Right. It's also a postural muscle that prevents you from falling forward. Right. So it's really, really, really important. So we know that if they measure blood pressure and your blood pressure is higher in your ankle, it increases your risk of dementia dramatically.
Interesting.
Because this muscle's firing all the time, we theorize it's around 80% slow twitch. So less growth potential as a bodybuilder, but if we could train something that's going to help prevent Alzheimer's and dementia and maintain blood pressure in our later years, it's probably a pretty big idea or a good idea to train it. So yeah, I heard the second heart analogy about a decade ago off the top of my head. It's now starting to gain a lot more credence, and it's really, really important. So it's something that, while visually on stage, will it make a difference? I still think training your soleus is smart because it'll also, remember, it's going to help with ankle stability. This one does not cross the knee joint. That's why when your knee's bent, it gets the priority. But if it's doing stuff that can regulate blood pressure, which is an issue for people in bodybuilding, that's a pretty damn big reason to do it. And again, type 1 is slow twitch, not the greatest for growth potential, but if it regulates all that stuff, we should train it. Now, I will go maybe two sets of straight leg to 1 set of bent knee.
That's
calf training.
Yeah.
Yep. But I still think it's really, really important to train it.
Yeah, I may be more of a 3-to-1, but that's just me thinking off the top of my head without really mathing it. I am of the belief that, and this is kind of an oversimplification, but it's to make to create a visual. I see the soleus, especially in people who are small and they don't have very good calves and they're just starting to train. And this is how I viewed it when I first started. It's almost as if the soleus is the foundation of your house, and you can't build a bigger house than what will sit on the foundation. So from the back or from the front, I guess, we want calves that are wide. So it did strike me from a very early age, I'm gonna want to focus on widening this soleus, getting it to flare so that I can sit more gastroc meat, more cow meat on top of this soleus to build. And it worked. Now, I don't know that it was because of that particular cue, but that's the way that I always approached it from a kind of a psychological standpoint. The other thing, and I wonder if you agree on this, is, and we can get into the training because I don't want to get ahead of myself, so pull me back if you need to. But you can train the soleus the day after gastroc, but not the other way around. So one of the things that I did when I was bringing up my calves for all those years, because it is a very difficult muscle to get to grow and to respond because we're walking around all day. That muscle is used to that mid-range of moving us around for years and years. So there has to be a lot of focus, I think, on the stretch and on the contraction, basically full range, and provide a stimulus that it's not used to. Anyway, I would train the gastroc hard. I'd come back the next day and hit soleus. Then I would usually take a day off. Sometimes I'd hit gastroc a couple days in a row and then hit soleus and then take a day off. The frequency, I think because recovery is just so fast for calves, that it got to the point where as long as I was getting a strong contraction and I wasn't terribly sore, I would train calves. So sometimes that would be 4 or 5 days a week. And it still took forever, but I ended up with really good calves.
Completely agree.
Okay.
Yeah, 100%. Yep. Yeah, so gastroc, main visible, straight leg, soleus, deep, bent knee. But I agree with that. It's going to help a ton, and there's other benefits from it. I was being a smart ass about the senior citizen fall risk for you.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. Another thing that I do with soleus is when I get into a prep phase and I'm doing more cardio, I pull back on soleus work. I don't know if it's because, okay, all right. I think
that makes sense to me on paper. I mean, it's never going to be studied, but to me, yeah, as your cardio goes up, you are working that thing.
And I drop overall half work down anyway, but I don't cut gastroc as much as I cut soleus work. And I look at the two, the gastroc and the soleus is, from a training standpoint, is two separate muscles in the sense. And that's why I bring up about training gastroc one day and then soleus the next day. Because, and not the other way around, if your soleus is tight and it's sore from training the day before, the first thing that's going to be on fire, even doing standing calf raises, is going to be your soleus. I think the other reason that some people, I pulled back from soleus work, not a ton, but I pulled back from it when I was growing them, you know, in the 90s. And one of the justifications is if you have a slight bend at the knee, I mean, the more the knee bends, the more the soleus wants to play as well. So if you are doing, let's say, like a seated horizontal leg press calf raise, good luck keeping your, or a donkey calf machine is another good example. It's essentially the same movement. You're just, your body's in a different position, I guess. Good luck keeping the knees as close to locked as possible. You can't really do that without creating a pretty big vulnerability because that stretch is just too much with the resistance. So you have to have a little bit of knee bend there. And the more the knee bend comes into play, the more the soleus comes into play. So I think the argument is some of those gastroc movements will involve more soleus than others. As an example, with a standing calf raise, I don't want to say I lock my knees. I don't lock them, but it's pretty close. Like if you took 20 guys out of the gym and pulled them out randomly, I'd be the guy that everybody would say, oh, his legs are locked. I don't want to pile on weight. I want full range of motion and I want as much stretch as I can out of the gastroc. So I'd rather lower the weight, keep my knees very close to being locked in a standing calf raise, and then allow for a little bit of bend as my torso is bent in a movement like a donkey calf machine, like a seated leg press.
Exact.
Okay. Okay, good. We're on the same page.
Because with my bad knee, I can't handle lockout unless I'm standing. If I'm doing a standing calf raise, I could do lockout. And what gets you way more sore? Knees locked.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Because that stretch is brutal. And when we talk about how we train them, I am headstrong on rep tempo when it comes to calf training more than, and I'm already big on rep tempo, but that's my biggest thing. One thing I did want to bring up is just an interesting factoid, is we know that the more percentage of slow twitch muscle fibers you have, the lower your blood pressure is overall. So that's just an interesting factoid.
Oh, really?
And that's why the soleus, right, is so much more slow twitch. And that's why if you ever get your calves massaged, your gastroc's a little sore. The thing that makes you hit the ceiling when that massage therapist digs into your calves is your soleus, because that thing is firing constantly. It's always in a semi-contracted state. So that's why, yeah, very rarely is it the gastroc that's going to have you jump and hit the ceiling when that, massage therapist gets on it. It's usually the soleus. Like, okay. I won't let people mess with my calves. I'm like, no.
Yeah, I had a client. She's awesome from the UK. She does the best trigger point work ever. And when I say best, horrible manual trigger point, like, like nauseous, but so effective, right?
Yep.
She couldn't wait to get to my calves.
Evil.
And she grabbed a hold of my calves and there was nothing there. So she's playing around. She's like, oh, you're not very tight. And I'm like, no, there was nothing there. She was literally disappointed because she thought that I was going to be trying to crawl and cry for safety. And I did, but just not with the calves.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, I got lucky in that sense. Let me ask you this. With the when it comes to gastroc or soleus, it seems that it's the soleus then that can be the limiting factor for knee position while training legs, not calves, but like training quads, because wouldn't it potentially limit how far? I guess what I'm asking is soleus can play into Achilles flexibility. It can arguably keep your knees from not being able to go out as far with the heel still in contact, solid contact with the ground, correct? I mean, I'm thinking of something like a pendulum. I think it's something like a hack squat with an open angle. I mean, these things, is it going to be limiting because of that?
Gastroc would be more limiting. So there's actually an orthopedic test called Silver Scold where you have somebody's knees locked out. And we're actually going to talk about increasing that position though. So you're ahead of me as usual.
Okay, then I'll
the same page as always.
Okay.
But literally it's a test where their knees locked out. I press them there and then I put my fist under their knee so their knee bends. It unlocks the gastroc. And if this dramatically increases, that tissue work on the gastroc would actually help improve this dorsiflexion, aka bottom of a squat position, knees over toes. Now, it's not the greatest test in the world. There's things called test sensitivity, specificity. It's not the greatest, but it's still something I do in office, because if I do that and all of a sudden we get, 5-10 degrees of more dorsiflexion, I go, oh, we're going to start working on calf flexibility or mobility or whatever word you want to use. And that's going to help you do this, as well as biomechanics of the skeleton that we will cover shortly.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you're going to touch on that, because honestly, as you explain it, I can't see it. I see it as the soleus being limiting because the knee's bent.
Mm-hmm.
So that's cool. Like I said, I do have a habit of getting ahead, so I apologize.
No, you're good. So we got 2 more that are part of the calves, and then we got my pet peeve, and then we'll discuss how we train. Posterior tibialis. So this is a very, very deep muscle. If you saw, I had to go multiple layers deep. It is your most powerful inverter. So inverter is, here's my heel. If my heel faces in, that's called inversion. If my heel faces out, that's called eversion.
Okay, is that the left or the right foot?
So this is the right foot, and this is the heel facing you.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So its main job is that it also supports this part of the arch, we'll just call it the inner arch that's right here. And it's massively used for foot and ankle stability, and it's really important for athletes. So that tendon goes through here. It'll resist how much your arch flattens out when you are foot flat or stance gait or whatever word you want to use, right? And then it'll spring. So when I push off on my big toe, it will allow my heel joint, this is called your subtalar joint, to invert, which is how you lock the foot and generate force. So I need to explain what locked and unlocked means, and then we'll go back to this. So your foot has to alternate between 2 major shapes when we are walking and when we're running. So your foot needs to lock when you strike your heel with a high arch position, aka supination. When our foot is flat, the arch needs to drop. We need to unlock the foot, aka pronation. And when we push off on our big toe, we need to go back to that locked position, right? So now I'm going from inversion, eversion, inversion. Okay. And that has to happen because, say, for some God known reason, we have to take off sprinting because there's a bear coming or something like that. I don't know what would happen down.
It's happened before.
Something bad happened. Yep. You're generating up to 7 times your own body weight with every single step, and your foot's literally not on the ground long enough for muscles to contract. So we're relying on the foot structure to take that shape, which will tension something called fascia, aka a rubber band, and propel you forward. So we have to have that locked, unlocked lock. When your foot locks, your whole leg rotates externally. When the foot unlocks, the whole leg rotates internally.
Okay, so that is why when you see fat people at the carnival, that they walk like their shoes, their Walmart shoes are worn on the outside.
Because they're always on the outside. They're not getting it to drop.
But we all are, right?
So it depends. So yeah, I don't care how a foot looks, like stationary. Is it high arch? Is it a flat foot? I care how the foot functions when we're walking. Okay. And the posterior tibialis is very important at resisting how much the arch is going to drop, because your arch could drop too much, right? And that's the flat foot. But then it's also going to help rebound that energy, because remember, you're relying on fascia and Achilles tendon and stuff like a rubber band to propel you forward. So this is largely used for energy storage and return during dynamic movements. For a bodybuilder, that would be like if you wanted to do plyos for cardio or like lifting, but like for runners or field athletes, the posterior tibialis is a massively important muscle, because that's a lot of that spring effect, and it's allowing you to get into this locked foot shape so I could generate more force as I push off on my big toe.
Fair enough.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
And then here's the thing though, a lot of people without the correct foot pressure will start using a lot of posterior tibialis rather than gastroc or soleus while they are training calves.
Oh. If you have them.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Yep. But a lot of times we do that. So when we talk about how we train cows, I will bring in what I mean by that. But a lot of people will start to have that posterior tibialis do more of the calf raise motion than what we would like from the gastroc or the soleus.
So if you were born with posterior tibialis, you could have them removed. Now that would be a really good way to get bigger calves. You could just have them clipped and removed. I mean, it's smart ass,
no,
but
no,
not going to work that way,
that would
right?
make it way worse. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yep. There's another study, but that's a whole nother rabbit hole. Okay, last one, plantaris. Like I said, 95% people have it. It's largely a tendon. It doesn't really seem to do much function-wise other than something called proprioception, which is your body just knowing where it is in space without looking. It weakly helps with knee flexion and then plantar flexion, right? So pushing your foot down on the gas pedal or calf raise. But yeah, it's largely for proprioception. That is what I tore. I still get sick in my stomach because I heard the pop over my headphones. Two people next to me said, "What was that?" And I was like, "That was my calf." And then I sat there for 5 minutes before I had the guts to wiggle my foot because I was like, okay, I felt it really high up in my calf. So I think my Achilles is fine. I felt it like getting kicked in the back of the leg. But that was the longest 5 minutes of my life because I was like, oh, please don't tell me I just did my Achilles. Yep. So super fun.
Yep.
And then let's talk about my pet peeve, tib anterior, and then we'll talk about how we train calves.
Best muscle in the body. I think this is highly underrated.
Oh God.
Sarcasm.
Yep. So contrary to popular belief online, it does not cure cancer. It does not give you the winning lottery numbers, right? It does not bulletproof your knee. The tib anterior's main job is on the ankle. So dorsiflexion, bringing it up, and a little bit of that inversion we talked about, but the posterior tibialis is stronger. But the anterior is front, posterior is back. Both tibialis muscles provide a lot of stability on the inner side of your foot, right? So incredibly important during heavy lifting, right? Especially if you're somebody who does like a super wide sumo squat or deadlift or whatever for plyos, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, for my athletes, it's way more important in the lower body. Yes, prior to we know who made $1 million selling us that we needed to train this muscle. It had been considered the most undertrained muscle in the lower body. So at one point, the tib anterior was the most undertrained muscle in the lower body. Hip flexors were the most untrained muscles in like the midsection. And that serratus anterior we've talked about multiple times and we'll talk about during trap work is the most underdeveloped or undertrained in the upper body. I'll be honest, I don't do tib stuff. Tib anterior. I know John Meadows is big on it, and his argument makes sense, right? Get as much blood into it as possible. But where I train at, the calf machine and the tib anterior raise machine are on opposite ends of the gym, and I just don't care enough to go walk back and forth.
I want your opinion on this because I've never seen that I've never seen that it's logical. And I could be wrong, but what is the involvement of the anterior tibialis if you're going to do a calf raise, like you're going to use the calf raise machine with your heels on the block, your toes hanging forward, and you're doing what is it? Plantar flexion, dorsiflexion. You're basically doing your calf raise with your heel on the block for anterior tib. I can't see that. I can't see that because I don't see the resistance. It seems nonsensical, right up there with doing rotator cuff work while you're standing doing like holding dumbbells like a hammer curl.
Thank you.
There's movement there, but there's not resistance. It's not in the right direction. It's not in the right plane. Am I right? I just can't see this.
No, you are 100% on.
Okay.
Now with runners or people who sprint, yes, you want to have a strong tib anterior. Bodybuilders, I don't really think it matters. Now, but if you like doing intense cardio, you do have, issues within the past, that's fine. I personally do like having the ankle dorsiflect while you're doing leg curls because the tib anterior does cross the knee joint, which is why they say it stabilizes. I think it provides a little bit of stability to a knee on a leg curl. At least for me, anecdotally, with my bad knee, if my toes are up, my bad knee feels better whenever I'm doing leg curls. I can't go heavy leg extensions, but when I do leg extensions, I have my ankles pulled up. So to me, anecdotally, it's helped. So I typically just cue people, hey, I want toes up, dorsiflexed on all leg curl variations and leg extension variations. But,
okay, so I do want to piggyback off that, and I want to say this. I did experience very, very good results from taking advice from knees over toes guy. I don't know whether this guy's full of shit, whether he's not full of shit. But I tell you this, he's got an incredibly effective program that has worked well for a lot of people. I took a couple things from him because I actually purchased the program. I'm pretty transparent about it. I think I purchased it for a couple months. I didn't go through the progression of his program as much as I kind of took bits and pieces out of it. And one of the things I took out of it, I still use, and I do believe this 100%. It will never come out of my pre-leg setup or my pre-leg ritual, if you will. And that is, I always stretch prior to that. I know that some people go, oh, you're not supposed to stretch. You're breaking all the rules, before you train. I do, because I need to open everything up. I'm not stretching to increase flexibility. I'm stretching to open everything up. So it's not aggressive stretching. That's just to open everything up so nothing is tight and everything is even. The next thing that I do is I get on the treadmill and I do backwards walking. And one of the things that I picked that up from the knees over toes guy. But one of the other cues is I always make sure that every step that there's a lot of anterior tib flexion so that I'm coming up. And the argument was, when he explained it in the program, was, again, blood in there, blood in the general area of the knee, or in my case, the lower knee, because I have articular cartilage in between basically at the bottom of my knee that is an issue. So I want to increase the temperature and the warmth in that area and get blood in there before I start to go with a lot of resistance. And then I follow up with what you had picked up on, which I was flattered by, but I had gotten this from someone else too. So, we all kind of put together things from let's put it this way. I didn't reinvent the wheel. I didn't come up with something, so profound that someone's going to I need to copyright it. But I follow the backwards treadmill. I do it for about 5 minutes. And intermittently, I'll turn around and I'll do some lunging and stuff, make sure my glutes are warm too. But the point is, the vast majority of that time, 3.5 to 4 of those minutes, is walking backwards on in different paces, different tempos. Is the treadmill
turned on, or is it a dead mill walk?
No, it is turned on, but I don't, and this is a good point, I'm glad you asked this. I don't do it fast so that I can push against the treadmill, so that there's some resistance. Now, as I get deeper into the minutes, I might push a little harder, but I'm to the point now where I'm not really working that treadmill like I used to. I'm just getting it warm. When I was rehabbing, I was working that treadmill, the resistance, as much as I could. Point is, you don't want it fast. You want it slower so that you have that resistance throughout that range. But after those 5 minutes, then I go and I do 2.5 to 3 minutes on a recumbent or stationary bike. And for me, because my pain was about 2/3 or 3/4 to full extension of the knee, I make sure where when I did it before, I'd have my knees up higher so that the resistance was high, so that my knees were up closer to my chest. Now they're not, because of this past injury. I keep that resistance in the bottom. There's more resistance, more extension in the bottom. Not full extension, but close to it. And I get a good pump that way, and I make sure that I'm pushing evenly. And here's another thing. If you have a knee injury like that gets in the way of, basically creates an imbalance in the quad, your body is going to find a way to compensate. So when I went back to training legs, I would find, oh, that's odd. My weak side and it's not really odd, but it struck me as odd. My weak side where the injury was, I would have a little bit more glute soreness the next day because the body was trying to compensate by transferring some of that stress. Obviously, it was moving hip position a little bit without me really knowing. And that's why the isolateral work is so important. And not just the isolateral work, but keeping track of the same path. The knee is coming at the same path on both sides. The ankle is coming at the same path on both sides. Your foot doesn't want to go out versus one coming in because the body will find a way to compensate to get around that weakness. So when I was able to get to the point where both quads were equally as sore, the burn and it was, the feel was even, and the glutes were equally as sore, then I knew I'm getting real close to having these balanced out. My point is I was using that heels over knees over toes guys things, and it was so successful that I'm going to keep it in there. I am fully recovered, but I will not train legs. This is just, if I don't have time to do my pre-leg ritual, I will not train legs that day. Won't do it.
Yeah. So I do 1 minute dead mill walk. Heels over toes guy is a hilarious follow on Instagram. So giving him a shout out. That's a really funny trolling account on stuff that I'm not a huge fan on. So that's a real page.
Okay. What is it?
Heels over toes. He makes fun of knees over toes and
gotcha.
specialists. Yeah. So
okay. What are your thoughts? Do you think that the guy is sound?
I do dead mill walks. Yeah. I walk backwards on a treadmill turned off. 50%, I think is complete hogwash. 50% is legit. He's a brilliant marketer. So
yeah, I agree with that.
Like he's a brilliant marketer. But more often than not, if I hear his name, there's a list of like 5 people. I don't want to talk trash, but when patients bring up 5 people inside, I just go groan. I don't say that to them.
Gotcha.
I go, okay, what are you doing? Yep. But yeah, I like the dead mill, reverse walking treadmill. I'll even put my voodoo floss or my factor floss on my knee and do my dead mill walks that way. And that works even better.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm very opinionated on how we train calves. Do you want to say because I prep for calf training too, and then I'm very particular. Do you want me to go over what I do?
Sure.
Do you want to go over what you do? Okay. So you train your calves first. Period. End of story. In my mind, so long as the actual joints in your foot aren't hurting, you're training your calves. I do one all-out set of either straight leg or bent knee. Rep tempo is king, right? So the only 2 rep tempos I use is 2, 4, 4. So a 2-second iso hold up top, a 4-second negative, and a 4-second stretch. Yes, we know that the top position isn't important, but I like it because it's hard and it makes you focus more and it makes you more present. The only other rep tempo I follow is DC calves from Dante. I've added the 2-second pause up top, 5-second negative, 15-second stretch in the bottom between every rep. I do 12 reps and I have to beat the numbers of the previous workout or I walk home. That's what I tell myself. You count reps on your hands. Remember, I'm using a metronome, so it is a 4-minute set. So 2, 4, 4 or DC calves are the only tempos I recommend. But before you even start training, this is the one time like you, I actually want somebody to statically stretch their calf and Achilles out for 20 to 30 seconds, 2 to 5 times, right? So I want them starting to get that Achilles tendon warmed up. We're not doing, once you get around 30, 45, 60 seconds, yes, then you're getting some changes in the muscle that we don't want from a power standpoint. But that shorter stretch, get blood in the Achilles, get it warmed up. And then I am also very adamant about 2 things. One, rolling out the arch of each foot with a lacrosse ball or a baseball for a minute. So you stretch your Achilles out and then roll the foot out for a minute. What's really cool, and I do this in seminars and workshops, and everybody could do this next time you're at the gym. What I want you to do is reach down and touch your toes and see where your hands land up. You're going to roll out the arch of one foot for 1 minute. You're going to reach down and touch your toes again. And that side hand that you rolled out will be hanging even lower because you've released something called the superficial back line of fascia we've talked about, which is the line of fascia that goes from the bottom of your foot all the way up your body to the front of your forehead. So you do that, your hamstrings will feel looser. Your low back will feel looser. It's a big bang for your buck. It's also going to start getting the middle of the foot that is super restricted, most often on the right side because of driving in cars, or that is my opinion. That's not researched.
Right.
But when I could do all the foot stuff in the world, but if we're not rolling this out, right, and getting the midfoot to start to actually have motion so it could actually drop, you're mistaking for the forest for the trees. And then one last thing, so you stretch the calf out, you roll the ball, rotation. You were kind of talking about it. And so rotation, in order to get my toes up, my shin bone has to rotate in relation to this top bone called your talus. And if my shin bone isn't rotating, I'm going to get restricted and I'm not going to be able to go as deep into the stretch. It's going to impact squat mechanics. So what I'll have people do is you physically grab your lower leg and you're in a lunge position. As you shift forward, you rotate your leg in. As you shift back, you rotate your leg out. I will make sure Chris puts this in the podcast. You're thinking kneecap to big toe, kneecap away from big toe. So you statically stretch 20 to 30 seconds, 2 to 4 times, roll out the lacrosse ball or a baseball. A tennis ball is too soft. A golf ball is too focalized. And then as needed, I like proactively doing they're called tibial rotations. Do that 10 reps each side. You're ready to go. And then 2 big cues. I don't think ankle forward. I don't think ankle up, ankle back. I think ankle forward, ankle backward. So you're fighting for every last millimeter of range of motion. And to make sure the gastroc is doing the work, you want to be pushing off your big toe knuckle, kind of like what we talked with glute training. Mm-hmm. So here's your foot. If you're starting to use that posterior tibialis, the inside of your foot is going to start showing more. So you're going to get off that big toe, right? And your heel's going to start becoming more exposed. And that means posterior tibialis now is doing a lot of that plantar flexion motion than what we want. So I believe even Dante had that as part of his DC calves. He figured out of keep pressure on that big toe knuckle because we'll start to roll on the outside. And then you're not getting as much as that gastroc or that soleus. You're getting a lot of posterior tibialis. And I will only do 1 set each. 1 set of either bent knee or straight leg. I don't do them in the same workout. And I will not do any bouncing reps whatsoever. When I tore my calf, I was playing around with a pump set.
Yep.
So I literally, there is no bouncing. There's no explosiveness. 2-4-4 or 2-5-15. That's it. Now, like a beginner program on my website, it might be like 3 second stretch, negative 3 second stretch, but I will not let anybody go less than 3 seconds in the stretch position. Also, do you want your Achilles to do the work or do you want your calf muscle to do the work? Because the world's largest rubber band is your Achilles. There is a spot though, right? So we're just going to visualize like I got the tendon there. It's called the watershed area. That is where there's the least amount of blood supply because the soleus and the gastrocnemius muscle, it spirals around itself. That's why it's so damn strong to propel us, but we have the least amount of blood supply. So majority of the time, if we're going to have a tear, it's at that watershed area. If you feel pressure in your Achilles tendon, even though I said, hey, I've got to hit 12 reps or I walk home, that's the one time where you shut it down. You do not mess with anything.
Yep.
And that's my calf training. Mic drop.
My calf training is far less complex. Now, that's not right or wrong. It's not right or wrong. Don't get me wrong. It's just something that I've come to over the years to kind of, I don't know, encapsulate my perspective on calf training is from an effort standpoint, I don't care about reps. I don't care. All I care about is full range of motion. I don't even give the foot position consciously a lot of thought. I don't play with in out. I tried it. I messed with it for a long time. I'm like, you know what? This seems to be more of a hassle than anything else. I'm just going to try to keep. I think the only thing I really focus on is if my heels, I notice that my heels start to come in too much, I will reset and make sure that I end up pushing them back out. I want to go until I can't tolerate the pain anymore. It's not 9 reps. It's not 15 reps. Some days it may be 8s. Other days it'll be 15, 18. It just depends on contractile force that day, what it feels like, what the exercise is, that sort of thing. But I have a couple things that I do that might be a little bit different than other people. I think footwear is vitally important. I will either do, and I did this for years, and especially when I was bringing up my calves, I trained them. I take off my shoes. And everybody's like, oh, that's, of course, we all do that. Yeah, you didn't do that back in the 90s. That was something, obviously, Arnold, we picked that up from Arnold. Not a lot of people were doing that. In fact, you'd get bitched out if you were in a gym because that's just dirty and that's disgusting in some gyms based on the rules policy. Anyway, the reason I did that was to get material from the shoe out of the way at the ankle because it can be limiting in the stretch position. It can literally get in the way. That's number one. Number two is the grip on the block. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many times in regular shoes I'd have to, you start to slide. You can't keep the same position on the block. So you keep having to reset, excuse me, or you're fighting to not slip off. So now these days, the footwear is a lot better. As an example, I train legs. I think you said the same thing in Merrell Vapor gloves, something with a Vibram sole. New Balance used to have, I don't think they make them anymore. Minimalist. I think they were called Minimalist. And they had a Vibram sole as well. That just means Vibram is like the old 5-toe shoes. I never could do that because I'm the type of person, I don't have stinky feet unless I wear Birks. I learned that 20 years ago, can't wear Birks. I can't do the granola thing. Or Jesus shoes, whatever you want to call them. And I have to have socks. As long as I have socks, I'm fine. So the thought of putting my bare foot into a shoe and then training in it is not something that's not going to work. So Vibram then came out with their shoes, or teamed up with like New Balance or Merrell, and I'm sure other companies too, but where they don't have the 5-toe type setup, but they have that same sole. What that does is it's very, very thin. It literally is a barefoot shoe. That's what it's made for, is trail running. Very, very light. And it works incredibly well, not just for calves, but for leg training too. And you will not slide. There's no material in the front of the ankle to get in the way. They're incredibly light, and you will not slide on whatever block, whether it's a leg press that you're using, whether it's a calf raise, standing calf raise, whatever. And so I think that's important for the range of motion. But I just go until I can't tolerate it. And sometimes if I will add intensifiers, it'll be to calves. It won't be anything, which is funny because I have good calves. It's not like I'm necessarily bringing them up. But what it does is it cuts the amount of time that I have to spend training calves too by adding the intensifiers. And they're what I called shakes or shakeouts, where I do a lot of standing calf raises on a Gen 1 I carry and hack squat because I don't have a standing calf raise. Actually, standing calf raise machines are no longer as popular as they used to be.
I'm bummed about that.
Yeah, it's just kind of an odd thing. Those in pec decks, it's like somebody got together and went, we're done making these. I think because you can do calf raises on so many different pieces of leg equipment these days, that they're like, it just takes up space. I get it. I understand it, but they're still harder to find. So I tend to, what I do is I get as many as I can. Then I don't put the weight down, but I put my feet flat on the platform for a minute. I shake out to one side for 4, 5, 6 seconds, the other side, and then I go right back in. It doesn't take long. If you wait 20 seconds, you're going to get another 10 reps. So you wait 5, 10 seconds, you get another handful of reps. You do that a couple times, you're not going to get much of a full range of motion anymore. It'll cut your total volume down and total time down of training calves and increase the intensity at the same time. It actually works very well. And then, of course, finishing up with, a couple sets of seated. I don't split the two anymore. I don't split gastroc from calf work anymore because I feel like I don't have to bring them up. I'm just maintaining them to the point where, remember, I had a knee injury. So my legs are not as big as they used to be. So I don't want really big calves, and I don't want them to grow anyway, because all that's going to do is contrast and arguably make my quads not look as big.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
you got to be careful of that too. Scott McNally, he probably has to deal with saying he's got giant calves. They probably take away a little bit from leg size, even though he may have good quads. That visual contrast is there. So that's my calf training in a nutshell. I just look at it as effort. Just go until you get. We did 100 rep sets of donkey calf raises. I put my buddy on my back. That was back in the day when, you know, you had to be pretty tight with your training partner because you had his sweaty balls on your back the entire time. And we wouldn't do 100 reps at once, but you would do 100 reps total. So you may get 29, 30, 35, and then you do your shakes. I mean, I've been doing these since the late 80s because they were training in our basement.
Partner's still on you while you're shaking out?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Just shaking one out. We use a cinder block so that it didn't roll.
Yep.
And then you just keep going. Then it's another 17. Yep. I mean, you're screaming. Correct. You're just like, get me the out of this set. This is horrible. And then when you get to 100, that's your set. I mean, there's no sense. You've done 5 or 6 sets in there, and it's just crazy intensity. And it still took 10 years to build calves.
So you have good calves in 3 scenarios. You're born with them, aka McNally. You are morbidly obese and lose a bunch of weight.
True.
Or you are sick in the head because growing actual cows, not calves, takes years and a lot of pain and a lot of patience, and you are sucking it up because it's one muscle where you're not going to do like California Pro pump stuff and they're going to grow. They will not grow, period. You've got to force them to.
You pretty much nailed it. And I want to add, the easiest of those 3 is to just get really fat. Take 3 years, get really, really fat. You'll never see, doesn't matter if it's a guy or a woman who has, if they have spent more than 5 years obese and they lose weight, they will have good calves because those calves had to grow to move all that weight around during that time that they were fat. And it works. I don't have anything else to add. I think that's a really good wrap up for the calf training. I did have one question for you. I apologize. Is there a connection between fat? Let me rephrase that. Apparently I have fat on my brain right now. Is there a connection between flat feet versus feet with a good arch in relation to good calf development?
That I don't know. Because also here's what's interesting. Like maybe flat feet are normal. We know ancestry has a lot to do with it. So people with Asian or African descent typically have flatter feet. A lot of times people with really, really flat feet is a response to a lack of internal rotation of the hip. So for some reason we just all of a sudden said, at least in Western society, oh, you want this beautiful high arch. Again, I care how a foot functions, because if you've got a super high arch and your foot's never unlocking, that's going to cause just as many problems as if you have this excessively low arch, right? I will start paying attention in office if there's a correlation that I could notice.
I say there is, but I have nothing to back it up other than my observations of paying attention to those things and going, oh, that guy's feet are really flat, and his either in the gym or on stage. Versus,
so what do you think a flat foot has
better calf development, or the potential for, or the potential for, And I have very, very flat feet, like to the point where
you are going to be getting a stretch on the calf day to day, way more than if you have a high arch. So
is calf training breaking down the arch?
I wouldn't think so.
I wouldn't think so either, but that's, I don't know these.
Answers, I can't make an official answer other than I could see on paper in a vacuum, just thinking logically, yes, but I don't know. But I'm going to start paying attention, because anytime anybody comes in with a lower body complaint, the first thing I do is watch them walk barefoot. because watching their foot tells me what's going on at their hips. It makes me look like a wizard because I could go, oh, by the way, you rolled your right ankle. Well, that was like in high school. It still matters.
Yeah.
But I will start paying attention to that. And so give me like a month or two. And then if we remember, and if I remember to do that, I could report back.
I'm going to smash and I'm going to pass. It's my show. Our show. Sorry. I'm going to make the rules up as I go. I'm going to smash going the fat guy route. I think it will be a lot faster and a lot more fun to eat French toast, donuts, Levain cookies, that sort of thing, and only spend 4 or 5 years being fat to get big calves, and then just diet down in 6 months and I'd have the calves. Versus, and this is what I'm going to pass on, the 10 years that it took me when I was so regimented for those years of killing calves 4 to 5 days a week for 10 years. So that's my smash. That's my pass. I'm doing both.
So when it comes to smash or pass, I'm going to smash every day, twice on Sundays. Any self-respecting bodybuilder should make it their mission in life to have cows and not calves. It's going to be way more painful doing it my way versus getting morbidly obese, like Skip said. But regardless, the ends justify the means. Get some calves. Or I should say, get some cows.
The sweet music of love, we can no longer...
I think it's time for intimate time with Skip and Dr. Marv. Is it my turn? I think it's my turn. I hate it when it's my turn, actually. I like asking the questions versus answering them, but I guess it's my turn to be on the hot seat.
Okay, so if this is your first time tuning in, make sure you like, share, subscribe, and tell all your best friends about the greatest podcast on the internet. But these are questions that Skip does not know. They cannot be tied to what we do for a living, and he has to answer them. And he also needs to give a condensed answer, not his normal Skip monologue. So, what was your first car?
Yeah, it was a yellow, and it was yellow. It had an orange pinstripe on the side. It was a Chevette, a 2-door Chevette, but I sold it to get a 4-door, 2-tone blue Chevette, but it was an automatic.
That's
Paid
awesome.
$300 for it.
Nice.
Mhm.
What's the favorite car you've ever owned? Because you're a Beamer guy, right?
I am. Yes, I am. My favorite car is the car I have right now. I have a M5 modded.
What year?
16, paid for, tuned. No, I have catless downpipes. I'm thinking about my truck too, because I did have a lifted truck. I went from a lifted truck to an M5. That says a lot right there. But yeah, the dining exhaust, it's not, it's louder, but it's still classy. And I like the M5 because it's unassuming. You have to know what I have.
Yes.
So I have Mustangs.
Is that the one where you have the M button too, where it unlocks? Yeah. So I like that because you could be super under the radar, but if you want to blow the doors off somebody, you press a button and it transforms it.
Absolutely. And
That's
just
pretty badass.
It handles so incredibly well. I love the executive package. It's just decked out. I went for an M3 and they're not big enough. So my wife talked me into the 5. So happy that we did.
Nice. Favorite caffeine delivery mechanism?
Oh, I usually have one right here. Monster Zero.
How much caffeine do you consume in a given day?
Prep right now, only 2. So 400 milligram, but I make sure that they're at least minimum 4 hours apart. So it's usually first meal, third meal. The third meal is my pre-workout meal, and then I don't have any more. I mean, I don't want to die. I'm 55.
You don't do pre-workout?
It's pre-workout in the sense that it's my pre-meal, but I don't do I haven't used a pre-workout in 15, 18 years.
Yeah, I know we always do training, but that would be a fun conversation.
Yep.
Favorite movie villain of all time?
Villain. I have favorite movies, but I can't think. I'm more of a real life documentary, true to life, true story type thing, not as much fiction. So if you're saying villain, that's that's a tough one because the movies that I really like, classics like Shawshank and things like that, there just isn't much of a villain. So I'm going to have to force a fiction, and it's a generic answer because I can't come up with anything. Again, it's going to be something like the Joker or something that plays, something.
So Heath Ledger is my all-time favorite. He finally surpassed Darth Vader. That's the greatest
See, and
villain
I've not
ever.
seen Star Wars.
The originals?
I'm just not I know. I'm not a fiction guy. Game
Okay.
of Thrones, any of that. Squid Games, maybe, but that's just,
Okay,
that I don't consider
had we
that
had
normal.
this conversation when we were talking about starting the podcast, you might not have a co-host if I knew you never saw Star Wars.
I'm not a fiction guy.
All right. Damn, that blew my mind. All right.
Yeah.
I'm so disappointed. Favorite movie protagonist?
I mean, assuming you mean like hero, awesome guy, that sort of thing. I'm a huge Clint Eastwood fan. I think that Unforgiven is arguably one of the best movies that he has ever done. So I don't know what his character's name was, but it's a hell of a thing to kill a man. You take everything he's got and everything he's ever going to have. Loved it. Just loved
Excellent. So we've already been kind of talking about it. Your top 3 movies of all time for yourself.
This one's pretty easy. Shawshank is up there. It's just so classic. Top Gun is number 1 because it was so nostalgic and has such sentimental value. The first one or the
second one?
Top Gun is number 1. Top Gun is number 1.
The first Top Gun or the second Top Gun?
Oh, I'm sorry. First one because I was a teenager and that movie impacted me so bad. Like I knew at that moment, I have to get out of Michigan. I have to get to California. I need to, it got me into super sport bikes, which is funny because you go back and you look at that Hurricane and it was just horrendous. That thing was a tank. And I didn't end up buying Hurricanes. I ended up with ZX10, ZX7Rs, things like that. But it took me down that path and of I want to say coolness when I was younger. Okay. So it goes Top Gun number 1, probably Shawshank number 2, but Unforgiven is right up. There's other ones, but those are the ones that come to mind first.
Do you have a movie or TV show you find yourself quoting frequently?
Well, there's always Top Gun. I age myself with that all the time, but Schitt's Creek. I am a Moira fan. Moira-isms. Keep the carriage in the wake of the mare. I just think that's awesome. The things that she came up with and the words that she used, I'd make notes. I'd pull out my phone and my wife would be like, "You're making another note." I would keep track of the words that she used. I do that. I love that.
Okay, you can be mad at me because I've never seen that.
It's really
duality, good. Yeah. Duality time. What is your biggest strength and simultaneously your biggest weakness?
I am incredibly, no matter what it is, relationships or whatever else, I am incredibly loyal to a fault, committed, loyal. And thankfully my wife is too. So we're in that sense, we're like made for each other. 33 years of marriage, and not just marriage, but happily married. And then my biggest fault, I will, if you fuck me over, I don't care who you are. I don't care the relationship that I had with you. I don't care about how good the past was. I will write you off and forget about you forever. However, when you talk to me, you may not know that. Like if I see you somewhere, I'm not going to, it sounds like, oh, you patronize people. You're not being, no, I'm just not going to let the negativity play out. I'm going to let you think everything is fine, but I'm done with you.
Yep. All right. I'm literally going to bet $100 on your answer. Who's going to win the World Series this year?
Oh, that one, I'll be honest with you. I don't make those types of predictions because I don't have a team that I'm loyal to. I just love baseball. I have tickets to the Pirates game the day after Masters Nationals because it's on my bucket list to get to every major league park, and this will only be number 8. But I don't care about the Marlins. I don't care about the Rockies. I go see the Marlins because I live here. I'm a fan by proxy, same like I was in Colorado. I just want good baseball. It could be the Cardinals. It could be the Padres for that matter. I just love good baseball.
I'll go with the Padres. Lifelong Padre fan, aka not a big baseball fan for obvious reasons.
Right. Petco Park.
And you are off the hot seat.
Nice.
Awesome. So
those were
we got
easier.
one question, and then we will wrap this up. So this person will be entered into the drawing. We have one more show to go before April is done, and
That's
we will
right.
announce winners.
And we're going to be throwing protein. I'm going to be throwing protein left and right. And you know what? It's 3 pounds this month, but I am upping that to a 5-pound tub next month.
Nice.
Yep.
Hopefully by next month, my squat course is done. I'm working on that as soon as we finish, which
Very
is a
cool.
massive undertaking. All right. So this is from Devil, 5HLY Grim 972. It was an older question, but I loved it. And I want to hear what you did, because I did kind of a similar experiment at the same time. And that was before you and I started doing this. So he commented on the chest exercise movement. He said those declines work like a charm.
Nice.
My chest was crippled for about 4 days. Thank you. Hey, Skip, whatever happened to training 1 week on and 1 week off, and did it work for you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did the experiment. Gosh, it's coming up on,
It's been
is it a
minute.
year or 2?
I think
Year
it's like a
something?
year.
Yeah, about a year.
I feel like it's got to be less than a year, because I did something similar.
Okay.
Around
Yeah,
the
it
same
was.
time.
It was over
Yeah.
the winter, because I remember doing it during the holidays. So yeah, about a year and a half, or coming up on a year and a half. It actually worked incredibly well. And the backstory real quick is this. For years, I had said, man, when I take a week off of training, I come back and I am so strong. The pumps are insane. My joints feel like $1 million. Gee, if I could feel like this first week all the time, man, I'd have massive gains. And then I'm like, I've said this for a long time. Wonder what would happen if I trained every other week. So I started thinking about it. I'm like, well, I would have better recovery. I'm bored with my training now. Remember, I'm training over 40 years. And at that time, I was thinking, you know what? I'm about 3 or 4 months from starting prep. And I don't know about everybody else. I don't know about you, Marv, but I get a little bit lost in the off season because it's been boring to me. There's not a carrot hanging in front of me. I'm still regimented. I'm still pretty much in prep mode with my diet, and everything else is just more calories, but it's just boring. There's nothing there. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to take the next few months, especially through the holidays and stuff, and I'm going to train every other week, and I'm going to see how it goes. And it actually went really well. The first month was great. The second month was pretty good. And then it started to kind of trail off there. I wasn't regressing at all. I was still progressing even into the third month. I think I ended up going about 16 weeks, 16, 17 weeks. By the fourth month, though, I could tell it was pretty clear that, okay, my recovery is maximized, but the progress isn't any better now than when I was training every week. Here's the part that kicked me back into, well, prep did. It kicked me back into to the regular schedule, because I didn't want to come into a prep training every other week. But this is even equally as important, is what an odd coincidence that every time I would have to go out of town, it would be the week that I had to train. And I just thought it would be really convenient if I was only out of town when I went, but it doesn't work that way. So then it became kind of frustrating, because I'd have this downtime for a week. Obviously I was still on my diet and everything, but I didn't spend any time in the gym. Like I didn't train. And in the off season, I don't do cardio either. I'm not a huge fan of cardio unless it's necessary, unless I'm getting lean, and I can stay lean that way based primarily, on my diet. But I just got to the point where I'm like, you know what, I'm going to go back. And when I went back, it really, my progress stayed the same. You could argue and say, well, why didn't you just keep going a week at a time? But I was coming into prep. So I did change back. It was very productive, but that progression started falling off the further that I got into, and then it just became just like I was training another week. And a lot of people were surprised by it. They thought that it would just end up where, oh, you're going to start to regress. You're only training every other week. No. And my joints felt great.
Yeah.
Did not have any aches or pains or niggles or anything like that. It was really good. And I'm glad that I did it. That's how I work. I like that trial and error. I like experimentation like that and learning things.
Yeah, it was fun. And then I have a quick PSA before we wrap up, but it was funny because right when you announced that, I started where 1 week I did my normal high intensity, rest, pause, low volume. And then the following week was reps and reserve, higher volume. So we started those experiments around the same time. One of my clients said he would try it with me, and we rode that out for 6 months for him, and he did phenomenal.
Nice.
Because you have also the different like mindsets going into two different workouts totally differently, right? So I should be doing more reps and reserve, higher volume. We know I should. It's just so freaking boring to me.
Yeah. Yep.
But anyway, so I did that. I should probably think about doing that again. But yeah, no. I'm glad they asked the question, and I'm glad you did that, because I will not ask anybody to do something I haven't personally done either.
That's how I am. Yeah. It doesn't matter if it's a training concept, doesn't matter if it's a dieting method, doesn't matter if it's a supplement or a super supplement. I will not advise on something that I have not done. And I think that's important as to clients. I would think if I'm a client of Justin's, I don't want him telling me to do something that he hasn't done before or experiment on me. You experiment on yourself. And then if it's successful, or you have an answer as to whether it works or not, then you take that to your clients. You don't use your clients as guinea pigs, my opinion.
Yep. Hell, I had the bottom of my foot dry needle just so I knew what I was asking a patient to do. God, that was terrible. So
I bet.
Only once have I asked to needle somebody's foot, and that was as a Hail Mary. But because I was like, okay, I know what this feels like. This sucks, but let's do it. Okay, one real quick thing. This is my PSA soapbox moment. So I spent the weekend as a vendor or a sponsor, whatever word you want to use it, at John Sherman's bodybuilding show out here in Houston. And something that I see all the time, especially with newer competitors, is they dictate the entire outcome, whether it's a success or failure, based on their placing, not the package they presented. Because I can't tell you how many people that day or in the morning, super excited, this is the best I've looked, got second call outs, not what they wanted, and got really mad. This is a subjective sport, and you can't control what other people are doing. You can only control what you want. So especially for new competitors, if you're excited with how you look the morning of the show, don't let a subjective placing take that away from you. Now, easier said than done. Some people might want to tell me to F off, but I see it every show because I do my best to sponsor as much local bodybuilding shows here in the Houston Bay Area as I can, right? So I do quite a bit of that. I put my money where my mouth is, and that just happens all the time, especially with newer competitors. Like, if you were jazzed the morning or the night before, stay jazzed.
100%. 100%. You have no control over who shows up. I showed up 2003 to the Colorado State and got to stand next to Phil Heath, who was not in great condition. But it was very, very clear from the onset that everyone in that show was going to get their asses kicked. And they did. Now, it was cool that he asked me afterwards how I got into such incredible condition and that he wished he could get into that condition. And I laughed and said, yeah, you're going to do just fine. And we became friends after that. In fact, funny little story, his buddy laughingly said, as they were walking away, one of those buddies who rides the coattail of their friends, you know, doesn't really look like they work out, so, and kind of laughed at me because I was sitting there eating donuts. And Phil said, don't laugh at him. He had arguably had the best condition in the show. Shut that kid up real quick. Appreciate you, Phil.
Awesome.
We're going to be friends. On that note, we got to get to getting. This is Skip and Dr. Marv splitting. Bah. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to like, subscribe, share, and ring the bell. It should sound a little something like this. And if you didn't like the show, just pretend you did. Like, subscribe, share, and ring the bell anyway. We want to hear your questions, feedback, and any ideas you have about future topics in the YouTube comment section. If your question or topic is chosen for the show, you'll go into a separate drawing and we will randomly choose one winner at the end of each month who will receive a 3-pound bag of Team Skip protein this month, but 5-pound tub starting next month from TrueNutrition.com. Be sure to use the TrueNutrition.com link in the closing credits to save 10% on not just Team Skip protein, but every supplement they sell. Not only do I use my Team Skip protein with my clients, but other top prep guys have their clients use my protein because it's that good. Dr. Marv, how could someone reach out to you if they have questions or if they want to work with you?
So I'm most active on Instagram at dr.marvin.saysdc. My website's theeducatedmehead.com. My office is in the Houston Bay area, so I do telemedicine all over Texas if you need help with posing or training. If you're not in Texas, I could do consults through the Educated Me Head. Just know I am fully booked through the month of April already, so if you're going to want to do something together, get on my schedule sooner than later.
If you have too much skin, go to teamskip.com and you'll find all of my contact information, including Team Skip merch. Of course, you can follow me on IG at Intense Muscle as well. Keep in mind, this is a team of 3, not 2. Chris is the enigma behind the scenes, and he is responsible for all the visuals and graphics, and he also plays a huge role in the creative process. This project would not work without him. So from all 3 of us, it's been a business doing pleasure with you. Join us again next week for another episode of Between Two Dumbbells.
Dumbbells.
Loading Team Skip. Loading Team Skip.